you have here is a cite button. And there's a couple of different citation styles here. I'm going to come down and look at the one for APA. What this will do is make its best attempt to create a citation that is accurate. My suggestion is feel free to use it, just double check that it's correct. So, for the sake of argument, we have got, and I publish an APA on a regular basis, I can glance at this for just a second and I already see that there's problems. But let's walk through it. This is what it suggests is the correct citation. Well, it's got the last names and the initials of the people that contributed, which is actually a little bit incorrect for a couple of reasons. I'm going to see if I can bring this down just so we can compare. So first author we have here is Tomovic, Cynthia. So it has Tomovic, comma, C, period, and then a small c, which it thinks is her middle name. Well, it's not. It's her email address. The database isn't smart enough to tell the difference. So that C should not be there. And it actually, the same thing exists for each of these. Also, the full names are capitalized. That's definitely not correct. First initial is the only one. The initial should be, or the first letter of the last name should be capitalized, but the rest of the last name should not. Then we have a year, 2015, that's correct. Then we have the title of the article. Well, it's got the name correct. However, this should not be all caps. As a matter of fact, the only things that should be capitalized here would be the first word in the title, then anything else that's a proper noun. Everything else should be lowercase in this instance. Then it says it's in the Journal Technology and Engineering Teacher. That's correct. Volume 75, Issue 1. That's correct. Page numbers 34 to 39. That's correct. And then sometimes you'll get something at the end called a DOI number, which would be down here. We don't have that, so it's not listed. So, I publish an APA all the time. I'm familiar with it, so I spotted those problems. Maybe you are too. However, not everybody is. So how do we know if it's correct or incorrect? This is my suggestion. Do a Google search for something called the APA OWL. It comes out of Purdue University. The OWL is a great resource. For one thing, it'll show you, and if you were doing MLA, you could use MLA, what have you. What I like about this is it will tell you how papers should be set up, but it also, on the left-hand side over here, just zoom in a little bit, will show you what in-text citations, your reference list, and all those different kinds of things should look like. For our purposes right now, we just pulled something out of a database, so that's going to be under Reference List, Electronic Sources. So if I pull this up, what we're looking for is article from a database, right here. And it will give us everything we're supposed to know about how to properly do this. So it gives us an example, author, initials, date of publication, title of article, title of journal, blah, 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 blah. Here it gives us a real-world example of what one looks like. I can switch between this and the reference that they give us in the database and see if they align. And if they don't, we can make changes. Here's the problem with APA. You'll see the example here has retrieved from blah, blah, blah. At one time, that was required. Technically, APA does not require that anymore. Now, the APA manual also says do what your professor says. So if Dr. Hug wants you to include that, you can. My advice at this point in time is if you got it from a database, just include this amount of information. You don't need a retrieval statement. It's not required. And if you do include one, it gets very complex because they don't want the URL here. They want the URL for the journal it came from. So we would have to do a Google search for technology and engineering teacher, find their website, and provide that. It's a lot of extra work for something that really doesn't help you. So I always advise students to skip that part. It's not required. If you're required for it for class, include it. Another example would be if a DOI number is assigned. And I had mentioned some articles will have this. You'll notice if you look at this example, it's exactly the same, except at the end, you include the DOI number. They are, in the sciences, they tend to be more common, so especially the hard sciences, so I would expect you to encounter these for some things that you find. Certainly there are other tricks to APA. Websites, if you decide you want to cite a website, the format you want to use is non-periodical web document or report. That would be for a generic website, not something like New York Times, but just a generic everyday website. That's the format you would want to follow. And you do include the retrieval statement there. I can help you with this. I can do a separate tutorial on just APA if you want to see it. If you do, please mention so in the comments. I'll be happy to put it together. All right, so we have addressed brief intro to the library website. We've talked about the different kinds of literature that are available, typically journal articles and magazines, newspapers. Those are the three you would see the most. Of course, journal articles are our preference. We talked about APA and citation. Let's address next. So when we first got here, I said ignore almost everything you see except for find resources by subject. Now we're going to talk about what's in this central box, which says search box central. There's a couple reasons why. One, we have access to something called OneSearch. OneSearch is fantastic if you don't know anything about your topic. When you get into higher level research, when you get into grad school, I tend to have people shy away from it because it's more useful for undergrads, especially freshmen, who just don't know where to start. There's one place, though, however, where it's very useful. So if I come in here and I say STEM education, and I am going to click online or in library items right here. Okay, so keyword STEM education, online or in library items. I could put that in quotation marks, not necessary in this case. I'm going to search. OneSearch looks a lot like when we were searching earlier. However, now over on the left-hand side, I have some other options, including ebooks. Here's why I'm suggesting this. We have a wide variety of books available entirely online. My first item here, as I click on ebooks under source types, STEM integration in K-12 education, status, prospects, and an agenda for research from 2014. This is probably highly useful for you. If I want to, I can click on full text, it'll bring it up. I can also look at the table of contents and say, okay, well, let's see what is under implications of the research for designing integrated STEM experiences. I'm going to click on this section of the chapter. Boom, comes right up. So now I can scroll down through, go to the next page. I have access to all this information.